We started in 1974 together with our late mother, who was also a collector of antiques and porcelain, silver, that sort of stuff. And our father was a massive book collector. I mean, we grew up in a house with maybe 40,000 books or more. I don't even know how many we had. We had so many books. And, well, we were all at a kind of crossroads in our lives, in a sense, because our father had retired. My brother here had well, he'll tell you, he had an academic career planned. I wanted to be a professional musician, and I was going to work at the planetarium, and there were all sorts of things in the offing. And then we decided one day when we were sitting in the living room to start Collector's Treasury. The name just kind of happened. I can't even remember who suggested it. Was it Mom or was it one of us?
We started out with Collector's Treasures as an idea, but then we found that there were other people trading under that name, and so we changed it to Treasury. I graduated as a postgraduate in medical history and was offered a doctoral fellowship at Chicago. And I looked at it, and at the same time, simultaneously, the Van Wyk de Vries report on the retrenchability of academic staff came out here, and I decided that I was in the top 3 of potentially retrenchable academic staff. And so we sat down and talked about it and looked at how much I'd have to put in order to live in Chicago while I did this, and we decided this was the way forward. And 50 years later, we're not really looking back.
Yeah, and we found a property which was a reasonable price, using the last 300 or 400 rands that my mother had in her banking account, literally. And it's taken all this time to build up the piles of stuff you see all around everywhere.
Oh, don't tell them that. You know they breed overnight. And we are one of the, I think, about 20 of the world's most eccentric bookshops.
But most people were specializing. They were either antique shops or they were bookshops. We blended it into something different.
Your nice, neat, in place, every book thing. We encourage what we call creative browsing in one way, and we believe that if we can't find the book will find you. And that's what happens here. It's no good coming in looking fixated that you want just that one book and you're frustrated that you can't find it. You have to come in here with an open mind and saying, I'm going to look and see things that I've never thought of and that I've never even thought of buying, and that suddenly it appeals, and that broadens the scope of what one does.
Well, we were talking before, there's 2 volumes of the origin of the alphabet here. Semitic, look, Palmyra.
And it makes you think a bit laterally and realize that nothing is in a single closed box, that everything is related to everything else in a continuum of thought. George Orwell's manuscript of 1984 has been published, and you see all his corrections, all his rewrites, all the things that they put down on paper, almost like a stream of consciousness. The book, I think, will survive because it is the permanent record. And the digital process does not obviate the existence of the book. In the same way as a print of the Mona Lisa doesn't mean that you can't have a Mona Lisa hanging on the wall. Despite the perception that electronics are supplanting print medium, it's not true.
If you dictated it into a machine and you can't actually read it yourself and you get somebody else to proofread it, you're not really a writer.
If Charles Dickens had emailed, we wouldn't know anything about what he was, whom he was friendly with. We wouldn't know how his creative process worked.
It was like when my father was in the army and he wrote letters to my mother. That won't happen now. You'll get an email saying, I survived yesterday's battle uh, with an emoji on the end. The book is the book. It's there, and it will always be there. In 100 years, it'll still be there, and someday we'll be able to read it.
We are the original hardware that Gutenberg developed the printing press for. And we're still the same hardware, and we don't have to have new models every year in order to be able to access information of the past. And we like to think in some ways that we are preserving the building blocks of history by doing what we do.